It's Saturday, no school today, so what you gonna do? There's no excuse to stay in bed, we're waiting here for you. Our show, join in now, get it together, get set, let's go. Do do do, we're wide awake. It's whack-a-day. I've come back to Barton because although I've popped over to see the spring and film it before, I didn't actually go up into the hill because the weather wasn't very good. So I've had a look on the map and I've spotted something that I've never heard of. So I'm going to take the footpath up to the top of the hills, and on the way I'm hoping to find Jeremiah's tree. Really nice walk up through the woods actually. There's a beech tree there that's been spray painted with fluorescent orange. It's had a few limbs taken off. And there's a lot of rot. Good girl. Yeah, I think that one might be earmarked as a potential hazard. Come on, Twinkle. There's some great beech trees here. Really nice. And it does appear that these ones marked with orange, with the orange paint, are all either being seriously cut back or cut down. I'd say that one there was cut down. Jeremiah's tree is situated just to the southeast of an abandoned pit, a chalk pit. Now this to me looks very much like an abandoned chalk pit. So I think if we go up there, we should be getting pretty close to Jeremiah's tree. It's a 200-year-old stump, meaning that it fell over 200 years ago and it's been rotting all that time. But there's still some of it left. And it was a hanging tree. It was a hanging tree on an interesting site. We're nearly there now. Oh, nice. What's this, Twinkle? Ah, this is where some enormous trees come over. Can't see that very well in the light. Let's get the other way around. Looks like some sort of chalk cave, which I suppose it is. But if you look closely, there's all rotted out roots in there. Some massive trees come down here. You're having an explore, Twinkle. You can't help it, can you? You're going to come a cropper one day. Come on. Now I'm headed south on this footpath, and I can see from the map that there are two tree lines to my right, which is to the east. Sorry, to the west. Now I've just passed that first tree line. It's this one here. So if I look across the field there, there's the second tree line. Jeremiah's tree is meant to be just about there somewhere. So come on, Twinkle, out the farmer's field. Let's get up to that second tree line. Come on, Twinkle, you're getting too far ahead. We've gone too far, mate. Come on, we've come too far up the hill for no bloody reason. Back down here a bit. I think this is our spot. Somewhere between that tree line and the path is just the other side of these blackthorns and what else is in there? Hawthorn, ivy. Now, got to bear in mind that all we're actually looking for is a very large, very ancient stump. That looks like a possibility, all covered in ivy. Yeah, I wonder if we might be coming back and looking in there in a second. I think we're wandering a bit too far. It was definitely this side of the tree line to the south. I think it's probably that big lump of ivy. Now, I did read that somebody had planted a young oak tree next to it to replace it. So maybe by spotting a young oak tree, doesn't look like any of those, might let me know before I go scrabbling into that ivy whether I'm roughly in the vicinity. Okay, I'm going to put the tablet down and have a little forage in there. I can see something. Well, yeah, it looks like this is it. This is Jeremiah's tree. It's a bigger stump than I expected. After 200 years of rotting away, you'd have thought it would be almost down to the ground, but it's standing taller than me. It's really covered in all this ivy. Let's see if we can get a bit closer. Oh, it's been burnt on the underside there, look. It's a massive, great big old stump, and look at that there, that's ivy. Jesus Christ. That's some old substantial ivy. Not quite what I was expecting. And I read that somebody had planted a young oak tree maybe 10 years ago-ish to grow in its place, but I can't see anything here that looks like an oak, unless it's all caught up in that flipping ivy. Maybe somebody needs to come and rescue it. Yeah, it's all caught up in there. Right, it's getting quite hot now. I'm going to, I'll have a little sit down. Just quickly show you where we are. We're looking down there, we're looking southeast. Those hills in the distance. That's Warden Hills near Luton. And over in that direction, you can just about see that's Sharpenoe Clappers Hill Fort. So we're quite high up here. So like I just said, this was a hanging tree. And it's been down for 200 years, rotting away, disappearing. And it was probably maybe 500 or 600 years old before it succumbed to whatever knocked it over. Now, the site that this tree is planted on, it's thought to be the site of an old Anglo-Saxon folk moot, which was a, sort of an early form of local council and court system. So all the local tribal leaders would meet up on this spot at this Saxon moot point. I wonder if there's any connection there. I don't know. And of course, people would be tried and punished here. Now, although this tree that we see the remains of itself wouldn't have been standing at that time, they reckon it was probably an oak. Oaks don't live all that long. They live a long time, but not all that long. This wouldn't have been the original Saxon hanging tree. It would have been a replacement for it, or one of its descendants. But certainly up until the 17th century, it was being used as a hanging tree. And it's marked on very old maps. You can look at maps from the 17th and 18th century, and it's actually marked on there as Jeremiah's tree. And it's on the modern OS map as well. This funny looking little stump, all covered in ivy, it's actually on the OS map. So you would have thought you'd be able to find out a bit more about it, but not really. I looked and looked and I couldn't find very much on it. It's obviously a very old, interesting site. I tried to find where the name came from, Jeremiah's tree, but there's no reference to it anywhere. The only Jeremiah I can think of is the biblical one. Back in the old Hebrew Old Testament, there was a prophet called Jeremiah. He supposedly wrote a couple of the books of the Old Testament himself. And he was known for going around ranting and raging about paganism and false idols. That was his main objective, from what I can glean on Wikipedia this morning. So it does make me wonder if maybe this Jeremiah's tree was a second tree planted on the site of an original Saxon hanging tree, and maybe it would have been about the time that the local people were switching over from paganism to Christianity, and maybe they named this Jeremiah's tree as a warning to them, as a reminder that, you know, God is all powerful and almighty, and you know, if you don't be a Christian, if you do anything wrong, we might just hang you on this tree. That's my little possible theory. I don't know. That's the only link I can see with the name Jeremiah. Who knows? Anyway, I'm glad I've been to see it. Twinkle's getting a bit impatient. I'm undecided yet. I might go over onto the top of the hill, although we've just done a big hill and I can feel it. Maybe we'll go down to the spring. I've got a book with me, which has got some photos I want to show you from Puddle Hill. I know that's a week late. If I was better organised, I could have shown you these photos last week. But maybe we'll do that. Rather than more walking, we'll do that. We'll go and sit by the spring. Hope there's no noisy children about. And I'll show you some pictures. Catch you in a sec. It has just occurred to me that we're looking up there where Jeremiah's tree was. It does actually sit on a high point of land directly between Sharpenoe Clappers Hill Fort in that direction, and then trees aside, over in that direction you would see Ravensborough Castle, which is another Iron Age hill fort, huge, even bigger than Sharpenoe Clappers. So you can see how maybe the chiefs from over at Ravensborough and the chiefs from over at Sharpenoe would meet here in the middle on this bit of high ground where everybody can see what's going on and everybody can see who's been misbehaving. Just a thought. See, Ravensborough Castle, it's right off in the distance over there, over the top of the hills. Now, unfortunately, there's no footpath that goes across this newly sprouting arable field. However, I do want to go across the bottom there to get to the spring. So when I get to the other side, I'll have a look and see. Obviously, it's all coming back uphill again. I'll have a look and see how it looks. Even if we don't get over to Ravensborough Castle, which is on private land, so we're not going to get much of a look even if I do go there. I'll tell you about it. But let's try. We'll go along there to the spring and just see if it looks walkable up to a point where we can see the castle. You wouldn't have thought you could grow anything in that, would you? Just lumps of chalk. But arable, wheat and barley seems to do pretty well in it. I wonder what that's all about. Almost looks like somebody's had a crack at building a modern day hill fort, doesn't it? It's got a bit of water in the bottom. I've got no idea what that could have been. It's sitting on the hillside looking over the cricket pitch in Barton. I'll have to look that up later, see what it might be. Odd. So we actually came out about 3/4 of the way up the hill to the top of Barton Hills, above where the spring starts. So it's not all that much more of a climb. I thought, what the hell? Let's see what we can find. I can see it. Very nearly there. I'm glad I'm in amongst the trees here because it's quite hot. It's always the same, isn't it? You look forward to a bit of sun. And the first time you get a little bit warm and sweaty on a walk, it's too hot. Oh well. I ain't going to complain. Of course it'd help if I didn't put my flipping long johns on this morning. I don't know what possessed me to do that. If I figure out how to, I might try and stick some music over the sound of those tourists. Okay, that was more of a walk than I planned. I couldn't help it. But how's that for a view though? Right up on top of Barton Hills. And we are right up at the summit now. So just behind me is Ravensborough Castle. Just through here. It's on private land, you can't get to it. And these days it's run as a shooting wood for pheasants, etc. It's huge, it's 22 acres. And in places the ramparts were 18 feet high. I reckon it's the biggest one in the east of England. Just make out, it's all wooded. This is just one little corner of it. Like I said, 22 acres, absolutely enormous. Now the bloke who owns it apparently is really good. He's very proud of what he's got. He's very aware of its importance, and he's even gone to the lengths of consulting the archaeologists in how best to manage the woodland without causing any damage to the hill fort. Because although in a sense trees are a good thing on these old hill forts because they bind the soil together, their roots, they hold everything together, there is also the downside that if you get a big storm and a few trees go over, they can end up, you know, if they're great big trees, they can end up tearing chunks out of the banks, etc. So he seems to be a very responsible landowner. I've heard that he pays heed to all that sort of thing. Right. We're going to take a nice easy walk now, won't we, Twinkle? Let's pick a path. There's a few. Let's see which one's going to take us down to the spring, which is sitting down there. Is there an easy way down, or is it all hellishly steep? Oh, what have I done? It's not too bad. As a general rule, if Twinkle can do it, I can do it. Oh, that's my knee. Huh. You just did that better than I did. Oh, lovely. Just in the nick of time as well, because I need a drink. I'm pretty sure Twinkle might be a bit thirsty by now. It actually seems fairly quiet down here. The noisy kids are a few metres over there. So, we'll find a nice little spot, get the book out, have a little drink first. Got a really good little book here, and if I was better organised I would have included these pictures in last week's video from Puddle Hill and Houghton Pit, because this book, it's a really old book. It's from the mid-60s, I think. Ancient Dunstable. Published by the Manshead Society, the local archaeological group. Now, before all that Puddle Hill business was quarried away and destroyed, they did dig up quite a few bits and pieces. So here we've got, that's an Iron Age loaf of bread. Must be pretty dried out by now. And there we've got the skeleton of a 13-year-old girl. She was dug up, and I think they moved her to the Luton Museum. That's where a lot of these artefacts went. And there's more as well. Here we've got this grave here. That shows 2 decapitated dogs and a mauled sheep. Now what they reckon is one of the farmers who'd settled on Puddle Hill was keeping his sheep there, and somebody else's dogs probably came along, mauled one of his sheep. Now in revenge he took out his sword and decapitated both of these dogs. That sounds about right to me. I can't think of any other reason why you'd have 2 decapitated dogs and a mauled sheep buried in a shallow grave. So that's a really interesting little story that they've pieced together from that. And here are the bones of a Saxon warrior. And these are some of his grave goods that they found. Now this Saxon warrior, he's not the murder victim I was telling you about. I haven't got any pictures of the murder victim's bones. But he, again, I think ended up in Luton Museum. I really wish I could have shown you these on the relevant video. Never mind. Now also, in here, this book in itself you could make a video about, because being a little local independent publication, in the back of the book it's got lots of sponsored advertising, and these ads are from the mid-60s. You've got here, for example, the California Ballroom, which was demolished 40 years ago, and they've got an advert in here, and you can see it's old as well because there's only 4 digits in the phone number. Now I'm just going to swap the tablet round because I want to show you one of these ads in close-up, and I don't want it to be backwards. So I'm just going to turn the camera around and I'll show you this ad that really caught my attention. Look at this bloke here. Come to Woburn Abbey, the stately home. It says, park full of many rare and exotic animals, and it has a host of treasures for the visitor. He looks like he enjoys his job, doesn't he? Right, now this is the one, here we go. This is the one that caught my eye. Thermoplastics Limited. In later years, known as Linpack. That's where I did my apprenticeship. So they've got an ad in here from long, long ago. Thermoplastics Limited in Dunstable. And it reminded me, something's popped up in quite a few videos. Doctor Bloody Who. Again, Doctor Who's popped up. Because I remember when I worked there, people said that Doctor Who had been filmed there a long time ago. Turns out it was actually 1971. And I had a quick look into it yesterday evening. And it was a episode called, hang on, I've written it down. What was it called? Terror of the Autons. John Pertwee, when he was the Doctor. And it was the Master. If you remember the Master, the original Master who looked like General Zod out of Superman. It was his very first appearance in this episode, The Terror of the Autons. Now, it was a really weird episode. The Autons were aliens made out of plastic. So they used a real plastics factory to film it, to make these aliens. And also, there are scenes in it filmed in a quarry. You can see a chalk quarry in the background. So I started digging out all these little clips that I could find on YouTube, and it's very clearly Tottenham Quarry. You can see the downs in the background. You can see the beacon in the background. So there you go. Doctor Who keeps popping up all over the place. I'm not even a fan, but just one of those weird things. There he is again. Should we make our way back then, Twinkle? I want to walk in the water. You can pick whichever bank you like. I wonder if we'll find my hat. I was quite touched to see on my last video that Zed and Bob were both quite concerned as to whether or not I'd injured myself when I apparently tumbled over. I assure you that was quite deliberate. Observe. Enough larking about. Come on, let's get back to the car. Come on. That was Tigger sneezing. I am absolutely knackered.